today's video, we're going to make this scene where we took our coffee beans from the last video and merged it with the bag from a previous video, and we're going to make this cool little render. But before we get started, let's take a quick break and we'll come right back. See you then. Okay, let's get started. First thing I want to do is come in here as usual and clear our scene. And then next I want to bring in a mesh primitive of a plane. And then I'm going to go to edit mode and scale it up 10 times. So I'm going to hit S and then 1, 0. Now that I've done that, I'm looking it over and then I want to extrude it downward to give it a little bit of depth. Now, because I extruded it down, I want to check my normals, so I hit A to select everything and Shift in to recalculate my normals. Now that that's done, I'm going to come back into edit mode and I'm going to start subdividing this because eventually this is going to be the ground plane for our scene. So subdivided it a number of times, and now I'm looking at the front orthographic view. And now what I want to do is I want to come in here and I want to start bringing in some of our models. So I'll go to the file menu and append because I don't want to link it. I actually just want to bring in a copy of one of my models. So now I'm kind of looking through here and I think I want to bring in the coffee bean first. So there's a coffee bean and it's kind of big, which is fine because we didn't scale it in the last video and we really didn't need to because we can do it here. So I go to edit mode, select everything, and I'm just going to kind of eyeball it and scale it down. We'll be able to fix it once we bring in the next object. Just kind of getting everything situated. Let me move this coffee bean out of the way because next I'm going to go to file and append, and I'm going to bring in the coffee bag that I did in a video like a while back. Actually, the interesting thing about that, it's been a pretty popular video, so I figured I'd make some content around it since you guys seem to be interested in that. How to make that bag. So that's why we're doing this, and we're going to do a third one that's going to be a little bit different but related. So now bring in a coffee bag, and I'm kind of looking at the size of the coffee bag as compared to the bean, and then I'm going to go back to the bean, go back to edit mode so I don't have to like reapply the scale, and I just want to scale it down because that bean's still quite a bit big for the size of that bag. And I think we're going to be pretty good there. And if not, like I said, I can keep tweaking with it before we get too busy. So now I'm looking at it in front ortho, and I'm just kind of comparing it to that bag. That bean looks a little small now, so let's scale it up just a hair. And like I said, this is not a science. I didn't feel like measuring the bean, so we can eyeball it and get it close enough, right? So now I'm bringing the bean back over center of the bag, and I'm going to bring it up above because we're going to do something called rigid body physics in Blender, which will simulate the beans falling with gravity and landing on the plane that we have there and bouncing off the bag and that kind of thing. So now I'm in my outliner and I'm going to just start giving stuff a name and start setting up some collections. So when we start making a bunch of these beans, I want to be able to keep them all in a collection. That's going to allow me to like make changes and move everybody at the same time. All right, so I've got a beans collection. I've got a bag collection. I want to keep those separate for a reason. So now I'm going back and selecting my bean in my beans collection, and I want to just start duplicating it. The reason I'm hitting Shift D instead of Alt D for alias is I want these to be copies of this bean because I'm going to do some effects to these that are going to make them slightly different, when in reality they're the same bean, but each additional bean that we're making for this scene is taking up additional memory. It's not like an alias where we just have one copy using the same amount of memory, because I want to rotate and change some things and make them a little bit different, just to add to a little bit more realism. So essentially what I'm doing here now, that I've selected all of these and duplicated them, I'm just selecting them all again and making a whole nother row of duplicated beans. I'm going to do this over and over again until I feel like I have enough of them. So while I'm doing this, there's really no need to fast forward to this part of the video. I just kind of want you guys to see what I'm doing. And I'll be quiet for a second and just let you guys watch. But all I'm doing is I'm selecting all of these and making copies. And now that I have enough of them in a grid, then what I want to do here is I want to go in and I want to make sure that the origins for each of the beans are in the center. So it's going to center for each bean, and that will now allow me to make a duplicate of that grid pattern. So see, now I'm stacking them. I'm just going to go ahead and stack them quite a bit because I want enough beans in here. I don't need millions of beans. I mean, we could do that, but then I would probably use a different technique. I'd probably alias a bunch of them at that point, but you'll see what reason why I'm copying these guys. Let's just get enough of them here to make a nice effect. And notice in the outliner, all of these beans are in the same collection, which makes it nice. So I can just right click on the name of my collection and hit select objects, and it'll select all my objects in there. So now what I want to do is I want to go to object, transform, and then random transform. And what that's going to do is it's going to allow me to randomize all of these selected items from different attributes. In this case, I'm changing the rotation on X, Y, and I'm gonna make a little change on Z. And it adds a little bit of randomness, so when these things start falling, they're gonna fall from different angles, if you will. But see, that grid pattern still looks very unrealistic. So now I go down to location and stretch it on the Z axis or Z axis, and that stretches them out. So now they're going all the way down to the bean bag or the coffee bag. So all I have to do now is go to the front ortho view. I still have all my beans selected, and I just move them all up on the Z axis above the bag. I don't want them falling from space because then they would fall with too much force, but I just get them slightly above the bag. And in the back of my mind, I'm kind of keeping in mind where I might put that camera. The good news is those beans are in a collection, so I can go back to that collection, select everything in collection, and move it after the fact if I need to. So now here's the magic with rigid body. I'm selecting the plane. I go into my physics tab, turn on rigid body, physics, and I want to set the plane as a passive object. Why? Because it's not going to move. I'm going to use it essentially like a collider. It's going to be a collision object, but it's not the same as choosing collision from that menu. It's rigid body, set it as passive, and then I've got it set to convex hull, and I'm doing the same with the bag, because what convex hull does is essentially looks at the shape, and it basically makes like a simplified force field, if you will, around it that mimics that shape, and things will bounce off of that force field. So now I'm going to do the same to the bean, but instead I'm going to change it from passive to active, because this is the thing that's going to have the gravity and the physics applied to it. I'm doing one bean at a time because you can't just select all the beans and apply rigid body to everybody. So I'll show you a little trick. So first thing I want to do is I want to just disable the view of my sub D. So I selected the one active bean, selected all the other beans, made sure that single bean was active, and then I hit Control L and copied the modifier over. Now what I'm doing in rigid body is I'm coming in here, making sure it's active, and I'm changing the margin there. So when it hits the table, the force field's a little bit, the margin between the object and the force field is a little bit thinner. So it should touch the surface with no problem. If that makes sense. And I'm leaving it for this case as convex hull only because the shape of that bean is very, very simple. If I was using a Suzanne head, I would want to use mesh in that shape option. So now I'm going to come in here and I'm going to go to object rigid body after I selected everybody and then had that active one, and I told it to copy the rigid body settings from the active to everybody else. And that's a quick and dirty way of getting everybody to have the same attributes. So now that that's done, I can bring up my timeline here and then start playing. And let's see what kind of animation we have. But first, let me move everybody into place, kind of center it up. So let's get a view, perspective view, where I can get a good look at this. And I'm going to start playing this animation. I've got 250 frames, so let's see what happens. Give it a second. So see, now the beans are falling, and because we transform them randomly, they're falling more realistically. Now see how herky-jerky everything is? There's a couple of reasons why this is happening. One, I'm running a beta version like an idiot. I'm running a beta of Mac OS, but I'm also running a beta of Blender, and the memory optimization I don't believe is complete for both of them. So my Mac is dragging a little bit now versus what you guys usually see. But the way we get around this, if you have a slower or lower end machine, is you go into the world settings, go into rigid body settings, and you do a bake. After this bake is completed, we're going to go back in here and we're going to play it again. And because it's cached, it should be a little bit smoother. And on this machine, it should be fluid. But like I said, I'm running beta software on everything, so that's why it isn't. But at least this gives us an idea of how this animation is going to run, so we can see how these beans are going to fall. And then from here, I can either crank down the total number of frames, either on the end or in the beginning, or both, and get this animation started kind of where we want to once we bring our camera in. So now I line up the camera to this view here. And of course, I'm not going to be married to this view. I'm going to play with it. So let's scale it out a little bit. And let's change the focal length to 80, because as you guys know, when you watch enough of my videos, I like to try to keep it around 80 for most of my shots. It's just a personal preference. And for this case, I'm going to do 1920 by 1920. This would be great if you were putting this on, say, an Instagram account or TikTok or something like that. And I'm going to crank up my pass per toe. It's just a personal preference. And I'm just going to kind of play with the camera. Let's play that video one more time and see what we got with this view. So essentially, for you guys, just so you know what I'm doing, I'm just compositing the shot at this point. The animation is pretty much done. And what I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to set up the camera where it looks cool. For the purpose of this video, all I'm after is like for that perfect still shot. But you can animate this too. You can animate the camera, what goes around the back of the bag, or zoom into a bean. Like, you can do a whole lot of cool stuff. But the rigid body animation's done. I mean, it's that easy. It's super easy. So just so you guys can, follow along if you want to with what I'm doing, I'm bringing in a light. And if you notice, when I went to render mode, I didn't have any lights. That is yet another preference, because I usually delete that default point light. And I usually just from the beginning bring in my own lights. Now, what we're looking at right here, I want to bring something to your attention. When I set up that plane, I set up box as the shape, but it's giving me too much margin. So I change it to mesh. And when our beans fall, now granted, I have to go back and delete the bake and redo it. But when our beans fall, they're going to touch the actual top of that plane now, whereas they were hovering above it before. So if you guys are doing rigid body and you run into that problem, I want you to be aware of that. Okay, so I just did another bake, and let's let the beans fall. I'm staying in front ortho so I can see it. So now notice the difference. The beans are lying flat on that surface now. So that's just a little hint if you have any issues. Another thing I want to bring to your attention is if you look at the rigid body settings on the right, see where it says sub steps right there. If you have beans that are bouncing all over the place, crank that number up. Crank it up to like 30 or 40 or something like that. And you will have a more accurate result in terms of your physics calculations. It will increase your bake time, but you'll have more accurate and realistic results. So that's another little tip. Because rigid body at a lower setting is just like it's really similar in Blender to like what Manta Flow is with liquid. If you have too low of a setting, like you get weird stuff that happens. Or if your object or your model isn't large enough, you get weird stuff. So there's little tricks and nuances to get this to work. But anyway, wanted you guys to like bookmark that information. So what I'm doing now is I brought in another plane, rotated it on X by 90 degrees, and I'm essentially making a back plate and a wall, because I'm gonna make like a partial structure here, nothing super fancy, and this is all for the purpose of setting up my scene. And I'm coming in here, I'm gonna run a solidify modifier on it. I don't need it really thick, I just want a little bit of geometry on it. And I want to apply it. And I'm recalculating normals just in case. And you see we have a big gap between the ground plane and that back wall. So what I want to do is move my 3D cursor there, and just to save time, I'm going to go into Blender Kit and I'm going to see what free model I can find for a kitchen. That way we don't have to sit here and have a 5-hour long video where I make a kitchen as well. So I use Blender Kit a lot of times to save time. This looks good. And what's nice about it is I can change the materials after the fact. All right, so there's a model I brought in from Blender Kit. And if you notice, that kitchen is really small, and that bag and the coffee is really big as compared to the kitchen and the counter. So what I want to do is I want to come in here. I want to select everything in that collection, and I want to move that collection to a higher area of my outliner, so it's not nested inside of another collection. And then I'm going to just scale it up. Notice I didn't go into edit mode to do it. That's because I really don't care if the scale is right or not on this one right here. And now what I want to do is just grab all this stuff and kind of bring it into place. So notice I got the countertop sitting right over the top of that bag, and I'm just going to move it down. Now my floor plane, I really don't need it, but when I was recording this video, I kept it there because I already had rigid body set to it. I could have just used the kitchen model, put rigid body on it and set it as passive, and it would have done the same thing. But I just didn't for the video. But I'm just letting you guys know you can do that, and it would have been fine. In my case, it didn't change the speed of any of the animation. So right now, all I'm doing is I'm just lining everything up so it looks more accurate than not. I'm just making sure wherever that kitchen countertop is, it's really the stove, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense to have a bag of coffee sitting on it with beans spilling everywhere. But hey, we did what we got when we got free stuff we can use for our videos. That way you guys can go on the Blender Kit, literally get the same kitchen model I use and follow along with the video. That's why I try to not to do a whole lot of, too fancy of stuff here. All right, so now let's go back. Now that we've got everything into place, And let's make some changes here. So one thing I want to do is I don't want my beans flying all over the place. So let me go in here in that little ground plane. I'm going to face edit mode and I'm selecting faces. You'll see what I'm going to do here. I'm going to basically make an invisible gate or fence for my coffee. So as they're falling, they won't go all over the place. I want to get them to kind of stick together and corral together. You'll see what I mean here in a second. So I'm just getting these little outer faces right here. And what I want to do is I want to extrude them up. So see, as the coffee beans fall, they're going to fall within this fence. That's what I'm calling it. And then I go into my outliner and I'll hide it in the viewport view and in the render view. So it's still there. It's still got rigid body passive set on it, but you won't see it. So watch what happens when I play the, I have to redo the bake. And then I bake it again and watch what happens with the coffee beans. See, most of them don't go past that fence. See the difference? It's subtle, but it works. It's a little bit of a hack, but it, as you guys see, it works. Now, if you really want to be nitpicky about it, look at the beans in the front. They're almost stacked on top of each other. Like there's something there keeping them there. It's that fence that we did. But most people aren't going to notice it. Now, the stuff I'm doing now, you may or may not be interested in. I'm bringing in a point light for that backsplash in that kitchen because it's so dark. And those little settings that you saw for those lights, those are called IES lights. And those are physically accurate lights that are, there's a website. It's if you guys do search for IES lights blender, you'll find the website. But you can download all of these settings for these lights. And I use Light Wrangler, which you guys know I love that add-on. And in the settings, once you install the plugin, it allows you to take that catalog of IES lights and load it in there so I can pop them in right from the interface. So the rest of the stuff you see me doing here is essentially just setting up the scene. We're done with the animation. We're done with the coffee beans landing like I want them to. And right now I'm just pointing it to the camera and I'm playing with depth of field settings. Literally, that's it. And I'm making sure that that background is not too out of focus so it doesn't look fake. And I'm not trying to have like that tilt shift look like you see with a tilt shift lens where it looks like little miniatures. I'm not trying to do that either. All right. And with all of those settings there, we're pretty much done, guys. I want you to really understand that this video was about the rigid body, to like kind of take the coffee bean that we did before and the bag that we did some time back and how I made those separately but put them together in a scene. And this is what your output should look like. If you like this content, please do me a favor and like and subscribe for more. And we'll be doing another one on this series. I'll see you guys on the next one. Later.